adversity is a great teacher, just like cigarette burns.
welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
Oh, hey, I'm Mike. I'm from the band Culted.
And what do you do for Culted?
I write the songs along with my partner Matt and play guitar, bass, make random noises, produce. Yeah, what you hear is made from all of us.
And how would you describe Culted's music?
Well, it's been described as blackened doom metal, whatever that means. I think it's got a dark essence, which kind of, I think, has this, I don't know, this from black metal, if people, is that what the blackened part is? Whatever we are, it's an extreme form of metal that's, both slow and dissonant, and one that I find to be transcendent at times.
Where are the members of the band from?
Well, there's four, main contributors, and 3/4 of us, or 3/4 of us are in Canada. I'm in southern Manitoba. Two of us live in the capital city, Winnipeg, while our drummer, Kevin, he lives in a small town just outside of Winnipeg, where the three of us basically grew up together and started our first bands together. And we've been playing different forms of music ever since. And our singer, Daniel, he lives in Sweden. And that's a relationship that was born, through social media, really through the Myspace, going back to Myspace days. And one of my former band, we'd been in contact with him and had asked him to do some stuff, some soundscape stuff, because he's, he was a noise musician and a black metal singer. And he agreed. And it was his idea. I don't know at what point, if we were interested in forming or making some noise together, and Culted was born.
Now, is it true that Daniel has never met the other three members of the band in person?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's a completely digital relationship. Now in the new day and in this day and age with FaceTime and stuff, with that, we have some conversations like that, but that's as close to in the flesh discussions as we've come.
So I also take that to mean that Culted has never played any shows or done any tours. Would that be correct?
That is correct, yeah. It was, when we started, it was going to be a studio-only thing, because that was just, what it could only be because of the distance between us. And we never really expected it to become released or there to be any interest in us playing live. So, yeah. There's been, some interest in it in the last bunch of years, but, it doesn't amount to much because costs, and now with COVID, it's just unrealistic.
COVID and the current situation aside, were there other reasons that you guys didn't want to turn this into a live project or play shows?
Well, there wasn't really a reason. It was only because that our singer, lived in Sweden. So there was, it wasn't feasible. I mean, there was no, to make that happen, the costs would have been ridiculous. And none of us have thousands of dollars to, fly one of us to the other continent to rehearse, to play a tour that would probably lose money. And, and now that we're older and we have, obligations, family, and whatever it is, mortgages, rents, whatever, that's just, it wouldn't be very sound choice.
As you mentioned, you and Matthew had gotten in touch with Daniel, I believe you said over Myspace?
Correct.
To collaborate on your previous project?
Yeah.
What was it about Daniel's work with his black metal band or his noise projects that made you interested in a collaboration?
Well, I had a friend of mine that, for whatever reason, he's always been my ear to the ground or to the underground. And this is, going back to like 94, 95 even, when I first heard like Dark Sounds, Transylvanian Hunger. I was steeped in, let's say, more sound, that kind of really clean death metal sound and thrash. And he was the one that introduced that to me, and we'd only become acquainted quite recently at that point. And he knew the other guys in that band at that time, which is just, a band from a long time ago. And, we became lifelong friends. And through the years, he had tons and tons of CDs, and he lived at home at the time, so he had money to spare, whereas I lived on my own from a very early age. So I was always hungry for more sounds, and he's going to introduce me to, you know, extreme black metal, noise, avant-garde stuff. You know, you want to call it neoclassical stuff like Puissance and Arditi, these kind of extreme sounds that aren't metal but have a uniform, or at least to me, they have a uniform sound that I gravitated towards. And at some point, he had the CD, and it was Deadwood, and that's Daniel's noise. People call it black and noise, but yeah, it's a noise project which has some similarities to black metal through his voice. So it was one of the first, like, kind of not harsh noise, but it's definitely a noise project that it was the first time I really, I don't know, it really caught me. I really liked the musicality of it. And it was the first time that noise really grabbed my attention in a way that I needed to seek out more stuff like it. And for whatever reason, I sought out Deadwood on Myspace. And I don't know if I must have made some kind of contact with him at some point. I don't know what I would have said, but in some way a contact was made, and we exchanged emails from that time on. And at some point I just said, hey, were you interested in throwing, contributing some soundscapes or noise to this project we're working on? And he was gracious enough and agreed. Yeah. And so it was that he was the first, his music was the first time I'd heard just extreme noise. And it was the first band that captured me. And, I was fortunate enough to quote unquote meet him and work with him.
So it sounds like the noise and experimental side of Culted was important from the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean, yes, yeah, totally. But it wasn't a conscious decision like we're going to have noise or noisy bits here and there. I don't, I like to think that we had an idea of what we wanted to do, but I think the only criteria that we set out for ourselves was that it was going to be slow and heavy. And we just kind of wrote under that very vague criteria and just went with it. And any noise that came from it was kind of like, it was just what we thought those songs needed. We never, had a preconceived notion of like, oh, we can't do that because that's not expected of a doom band or a metal band. And when our first record, or when we were writing those first album and EP and stuff, doom wasn't the big kind of genre monster that it became or is now. There were very few quote unquote doom or black and doom or metal doom. I mean, nobody had that moniker, that name, black and doom. I don't think that really came. I don't think anybody was being called that until, well, I don't want to say we were the first, but I think it was definitely, we were in the ballpark of being one of the first, that were referenced as such.
So, with Daniel based in Sweden and the rest of you guys in Canada, what is your songwriting process like? How do you approach a song, and what is the process through which you complete it?
It starts with Matt or I with writing a song. It's a guitar and and for whatever reason, thinking that hearing something and you have to hear it, played through a guitar or whatever. And it really is like a traditional rock song in that sense, that there's chords and there's progressions and we have an idea of what that song should sound like, how long it should be. And Matt and I kind of just flesh it out on our own. Usually we'll always be on our own before we even present it to one another, the riffs and whatnot. And we'll actually record a lot of the music on its own first before we even let Kevin, our drummer, hear the music. So before we even quote unquote rehearse, we've got a pretty good solid idea of what the song's going to sound like. And we give it to him and we let him kind of try to transform and find the dynamics within the song. And then once he says, yeah, okay, I got what you're going for here. Then then the three of us will get together and we'll demo the songs with drums, and then we can make changes, adding things or usually taking things away, and trying to really emphasize any of the dynamics and kind of flesh out the song until it's what we think is a finished song. So that's all done, and we'll often send those early files to Daniel, just so we can get a feel of what we're doing, what he can expect. Then it's a matter of actually properly recording the stuff down, and that's getting into finding some place where we can unload a ton of gear, play really loud, and really kind of just let the songs vibrate. And once we get a kind of a basic song structure, then we can take those guitars, then we'll take them to a proper studio where Kevin can go in a proper studio and do the drums. And then once that's finally done, you have your guitars and drums, then we'll send those things over to Daniel. He'll start working on his own, and then Matt and I just continue to it's just a matter of trial and error, mostly just adding things, hearing things, and just trying different gear and writing all different counterpoints on guitar or different gear. And it's just a matter of figuring out what the song needs to be finished. Yeah, it's like you have an idea of what that song should sound like, and you just work towards it until it's done.
So it sounds like the songs are mostly completed by the time Daniel gets them.
Yeah, the basic quote unquote rock song is done. Yeah, nothing. I mean, the basic beats are all there and the guitars are there. It's a pretty stripped down version that he gets, because it's usually maybe 2 or 3 guitars on there. Bass probably hasn't even been added yet, and
it would be like a pre-production demo, right? Basically.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, and then as we continue adding it, it becomes full. He'll add noise and sounds and found sounds that he is hearing that needs to be added. So it's just this continual collaboration of people adding to these songs. And every time you've completed something, you upload it. So we all listen to it, and we just keep going, okay, I like that. I can do this to it. That I don't like the way that works with that, or maybe we'll take some things out or won't use it at all. Or more often than not, it's usually more inspiring, and we're like, oh, I hear where you're going with that, and I've got something else to really add to that, and I like the direction we're going with that.
You've been working with Matthew for a long time, right? Weren't you guys in a project together before Culted?
We've been I think I met Matt in probably grade 7. He was in a town outside of, in a different town. We're 2 towns apart, basically. And they had their own school. And at grade 7 or 8, they came to our school because we were a slightly bigger town. So, I met him, and, he was probably he was, I don't know what it was. He had, I want to say he had long hair, but none of us had long hair at that time. We were all trying and had terrible, mullets and stuff. But he probably had he probably smoked and had a leather jacket. So I was like, yeah, he's one of us, right? So yeah, we definitely bonded over those kind of the aesthetics, but also the music, right? It would have been like Megadeth and Metallica and Testament, that early thrash stuff that really bonded us. I mean, sure, we'd grown up on Maiden and Dio and stuff prior to that, but that we were in the age now of thrash and the Big Four and Slayer and stuff. But that was going to be our whatever it is, our magnet that drew us together. And yeah, it's been a long time. And even going back further, Kevin, our drummer, I met him when I was 6. He moved in across the street from my family only about a couple months after we moved into our house. So I think maybe I was 7. Yeah, no, because I was going to kindergarten, and his brother and I learned to play guitar and drums together. And then Matt was like, oh, I know how to play bass too. So eventually, that was our core. We learned how to play Megadeth and Metallica songs in their basement. So, I mean, it's been a long haul. We've known each other a really long time.
I mean, usually when a band or when members of a band have been playing together that long, there becomes this almost unspoken kind of language between them where they understand each other musically. Would you say that's the case between you and Kevin and Matthew? Absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt. Matt, we played in that early incarnation of a band. We had a couple earlier incarnations, and then that dropped away because I was kind of after high school, and we all moved to the city and did our own things and had formed and joined different bands, and eventually Matt and I we always hung out, but we started working together musically again, and that instant thing was there, that whatever it is, that thing you grow up with, that something that goes beyond just friendship. It's beyond musical, just love. Yeah, this unspoken bond that has only grown over time, but it started, I don't know, probably in 98, maybe, again, where we really started working together. And that was kind of the beginning of Human Bondage, which was a more black metal oriented thing that I had been toying with, or kind of, I had the ideas that I couldn't get out with my other projects. And I asked him if he'd be willing to work on it. And since then, he slowly built a studio, very rudimentary, but it's grown over the years. But it's just been him and I, these different projects, but we're always the two weird producer scientist guys in the back that are trying to figure out how to capture these sounds on a low budget. And we always have these strange ideas on how to solve these problems and how we think these records should sound. And we just really, I think we really enjoy each other's company tremendously. And it's always a joy when we're able to get on these projects and work on them. And it's not, you call it a labor of love or whatever, but it's pretty great. And it's been a long time since we've been able to do any of that because, of course, of our current situation. I think I've hung out with him once in the last year and a half, and that was, at a very safe distance too. So I'm looking forward to very soon, I hope, to get back in close proximity and get back in the studio. Would you say that Matthew is the Steve Von Till to your Scott Kelly?
Oh, I'd love to be. I'd love it. I love it. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe vice versa. I don't know, or both. It probably switches between days, but yeah, because I think those are two interesting characters in their own right. Yeah.
So let's talk about this new Culted album. It came out on February 26th of this year through Season of Mist. Would you mind saying the title for me? I'll
probably say it incorrectly too. I know people are like, what is it? I still like saying Nous. I know Matt he had some people, I don't know where they were from, but they were correcting him, saying it was supposed to be pronounced New. I like Nous. I like that sound because it sounds like the homonym of something you'd put around your neck in times of sorrow. So I think that's an interesting connection there. But the word itself is from the Greeks. So it would be an easy thing for me to just look up, but I also kind of enjoy not knowing exactly what it should be because I prefer it this way.
So to be clear, it's not new as in the French word oui, right?
Correct. Yeah. And I don't mind that interpretation either, because that to me is I think that could capture a lot of what the record's about too. So I like that initially it was from the Greek, but the French, that works too, and I like the homonym. So all three, they're all usable in my book.
So tell me how this album came together.
Well, we had songs, we wrote them, we recorded them. No.
Was there a specific intention this time around? Because it does seem like there is almost an emphasis on minimalism and kind of the quiet, loud dynamic.
That may be. Yeah, the album is a long time in the making. It was a really fucked up time in all of our lives. We're getting older and more things are going to happen as you get older. That's inevitable. It just happened to be that event after event, negative, soul crushing, life altering events were happening to more than one of us, and in sequence too. And it was, okay, so one thing's happened. Okay, now you're going to have some time off. No, it was just like bang, bang, bang. And we're not talking like, somebody called you a name. Like these are things that change the way you live your life, the way you look at life, the way you treat others. Like it was, it's pretty harrowing stuff. And we're still going through a lot of it. A lot of it just continues. And that's that age thing, right? Where, this stuff doesn't go away. It gets harder. And you do what you can. So that being said, like, well, at the peak of these events, there were some ones that I know for Daniel and for myself, I was required to be, away from home for great periods of time and driving distances to be around people that were going through some pretty heavy stuff. And those things had to happen. And without getting too specific, yeah, I mean, so, for a good almost year and a half, I was not able to really commit to any kind of musical, or I wasn't interested. I didn't have the time to think about music. That would have been it wasn't even in my mind, because these were things that had to happen first. Not to say that I wasn't, music was also what was getting me through, in the sense of what I was listening to, long car rides, a lot of music that soothed the soul, to say. And after, let's say, what I've now started referring to it as this one final death that finally did happen, then I stopped having to travel. I could be at home more with my family. And there was a period after of complete just trying to get back into some kind of normalcy, both physically, my family, and, psychologically. I had some time off work in the summer, and there was this thing that happened, this pull, psychic pull. Was it Plato? Was it Plato? Socrates? One of them, they called it their daemon, their guardian angel. And it's that thing that starts telling you, it's that moment of inspiration, right? It's pick up that piece of wood with those wires and take those sounds and make them tangible, record them. So that was, for me, the beginning, the kind of the crux of, this record. And it was wonderful, because those moments, each day gave birth to a new creation. And each day it sounded like a different kind of song was being written. They didn't sound, to me, they sounded very different from one day to the next. I guess most artists do feel that way, but I don't know. It almost sounded like I was just taking in decades of inspiration and funneling it into these moments of sonic bliss, and found joy again for the first time in a long time through this music. So to me, it's been transcendent, literally transcendent in creating this album, and finally getting it fully realized, all the additions and the artwork and all that stuff, and with the others, and now that it's out there, it's strange to create a narrative about the record, but here we are, and that's what it is. When
did you start working on the album?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd say Well, we actually started probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and the first thing that would have been written, no, it wasn't written, it was recorded, would have been Crush My Soul, which is, I find interesting that, I mean, I've always wanted to do that song. I don't know why. I think it's I found the title of that song always had a really cool pull to it. I think those 3 words, those can mean so much. So and I don't know if it was telling of what we were going through or what we were still going through or what we were about to go through still. I don't know if it was kind of a signpost to say this is what this record is going to sound like. I mean, that really could have been the title of the record if it hadn't come from such an iconic band. But yeah, so it was kind of, but it's about 4 years ago that that they started being written. And yeah, I'm trying to think back. Yeah, it's been about 4 years now.
Was there an overlap between the writing of the songs on this album and the songs on Vespertina?
Yeah, there was quite a bit of overlap on the final song, A Prayer for Emptiness. Interestingly, Vespertina, the first 2 tracks on there in their kind of their rudimentary form were mostly, they were kind of ready, or they were in that kind of basic form soon after Oblique to All Pass, our last full length. And we were kind of gearing up to write a little bit more music for it and then release it as an EP soon after Oblique to All Pass was out. But then, life, right? That all these things transpired and that just all stopped, came to a complete halt. And it was following that period of where I started writing for Nous that I believe I kind of talked to Matt again and saying, hey, let's dig out those files again. Let's see what's there. Because I know we had those 2 songs. Let's see what we can do with that. Let's see if there's anything worth do we even want to bother with it? And we listened back to it and it's like, yeah, this is worth finishing up and completing. And so we did a bunch of work on those 2 songs and I knew that we needed more music. So I took some of the themes from those 2 pieces and kind of fleshed them out a bit and created a more ritualistic or tribal or repetitive drone song that I envisioned, kind of something that you would almost play around the fire and just kind of trance out to. And that was kind of my vision for that song, to kind of fill out to make it almost a trilogy, not a trilogy, but a triad of some kind of 3s. That seemed important to me, that it should be a 3-part, beginning, middle, and end to that EP. And so we did that. We actually took a bunch of gear. We loaded up Matt's van and drove out to Kenora, which is like a couple hours east of Winnipeg, and it's it's cottage country, right? It's lakes, and he has some family there that we were able to. They were kind enough to allow us into their home while they were away. So we had about 2 days where we loaded this gear in there right on the lake, and we set up the gear and created that 3rd song in a 24-hour period from beginning to end. And what you hear on that record is like nothing. I don't think anything was added after that except for Daniel's vocals. It was a really exciting 24 hours. We were able to tap into some pretty interesting stuff out there.
So we touched on this a little bit, but with the three of you, yourself, Kevin and Matthew, based in Canada, and Daniel based in Sweden, you guys record your parts separately. Does everybody have their own home studio?
No, Matt is the only one in Canada or in Winnipeg here that has his own studio. And then Daniel, of course, has his own in Sweden. But yeah, I've never been interested in building the studio. Matt took it upon himself to really delve into the sound engineering and get this stuff together. I think at the time, I think he was the first person to, kind of have his own space and have a place for the studio. So that may have been one of the reasons. So, when we got some money from our other bands and started throwing money into things we could record, it kind of started at his place. And then, any other money we had to throw at studio gear, we would just do that, and he would take that on and he would learn how to use it. So that was a pretty natural, just kind of like, yeah, he's the one that's doing it. And I kind of, I don't know what it is, but I kind of enjoy the idea of not having a studio in my house. I like the primitive means which I create songs, and that being like on just guitars and now I use my phone to record stuff, but I used to use just a basic digital recorder with a mic up to a couple practice amps and a bunch of pedals and stuff, and I would have a metronome, and that was it. And then I would take it to Matt's, and then we would flesh it out with a proper, with Kevin and stuff. So and it kept, to me, it always kept things very exciting. I didn't know what things were going to sound like as we recorded them, which I think kept the sound of Culted very vital and interesting for me. And I'm always, I think that, I enjoy it that way. And Kevin, he doesn't have a studio because he likes to, I think after this last album was the first time that we'd actually gone into a proper studio to record the drums. And I don't think he'll go back after that. And it was a very good experience. It was great. In the past, it's been a real pain to, find spaces where we could record drums. And
tell me about the studio where you recorded the drums.
We recorded at Bedside Studios here in Winnipeg with a guy named Len Milne. He's been in the music community here recording tons of stuff, won awards and stuff. He's a, great sound engineer, producer. His studio, from the outside, you never know what was going on inside. It's, it's kind of in the north end of the city, which is kind of considered, low end housing and, that kind of stuff. But inside, it's an incredible space with, amazing sound treatments on the walls. It's just a really unique space that he's put a lot of money and time, and he's had, sound architects in there to, get it sounding just whatever that stuff is called. I don't know what they call that, but it's a pretty great space. And it's a great space. I was happy that we were able to use them.
And as you mentioned, Daniel was recording his parts himself in Sweden in his own studio. At what point do you bring everything together, and who does that?
Well, it's an ongoing process. It's as you record anything, you just send it back on the files, and Matt is the main guy that takes those files and loads them up so that we can all hear them. And that's all done in Matt's studio, where he kind of just lets everything fester in there until either he's working on it on his own, or I go over there and we start collaborating on it together. And even a lot of what we do now after COVID, or during COVID, I should say, a lot of the record wasn't completed. A lot of it was completed, but there was still a ton of work to do. And, I wasn't able to go over to his house and work on this stuff like we normally would. So, it saw me taking on a different role. Whereas, you have this stuff on files, you're listening to it. So I was making notes. I had scribblers full of notes, with times where different things should be up, down, different sounds should come in. I gave him specific, instructions on like, hey, like to put this kind of guitar sound here, it should be tremolo pick this like this. You probably with this kind of sound effect on it, and it was just all these strange, esoteric, directions that I knew he would be able to interpret. and interpret them. He did. He took these scribblings and musings of mine and really created, or was able to solidify my vision or musically. So it was pretty interesting.
So tell me about John Golden, who mastered the album. The distinction between recording, mixing, and mastering is one that I'm only recently starting to understand. But tell me about working with John and what he brought to the sound of this album.
Yeah, I don't know. No, I mean, I really don't understand that wizardry either. I know things get filled in and filled up or whatever it is, and things are EQ'd and made better. That's the extent of my knowledge with mastering. I know it sounds better than when we first gave it to him. He didn't treat it too hard, because I know mastering can be a bit weird. We've had some mastering jobs in the past which we've had to redo, because they can, you can really alter a sound, and not for the, you can really quash, the original intent of a song or music through mastering. So it's a very delicate process, one that, you want a well-seasoned master to take on. And we felt John was the right person for that. We had a few people in mind, and his name kept coming up because of the work that he's done primarily with Neurosis, but he's worked on a bunch of really interesting bands. It's people that we look up to, like Sonic Youth or Melvins or whatnot. And so I think that was hard to beat that pedigree. Yeah, you just really could trust what he was going to do with it was going to be right for what we wanted. And we didn't have a lot of discussions. We let him kind of just have free reign on it. And he was great. He actually didn't have a lot of notes for us when he sent back the master. He thought it was a pretty some of the fewest corrections that he had to send back to us, which we thought was pretty good, considering that we kind of self-mix and self-edit everything ourselves. So that was kind of great. Yeah, overall, I think it was a pretty painless process.
I believe this is your second release for Season of Mist after the Vespertina EP. How did you guys get involved with them? How did you end up signing to Season of Mist?
It was just our friend of ours, Jesse from Kenmode. I've known him for ever and ever and ever. And they put out their last record, maybe the last two records out through Season of Mist. So him and I get together. We do these beer nights where we all bring, fancy beers and we all share and stuff and talk music and bullshit and whatever. And we were probably just talking about each other's projects or what we're working on or whatever. And I guess we had just finished Vespertina. We were starting to record some of the stuff that would become Nous. And I said, we're kind of thinking about some different places to put it out because, our contract with Relapse had expired. So, and he was like, well, give Michael a call or a shout and see if he's interested because, he's a good dude and he puts out quality stuff. And I was kind of like, I don't know. Season of Mist is, I find them to be a pretty big label with some, some of the finest, extreme metal out there that I currently listen to. So I was kind of like, I don't know. I don't want to be, fear of rejection, right? So. But, I was like, in the end, it was like, well, who cares? So put together a promo pack. So he gave me Michael's email from Season of Mist, his personal email, and I put a promo pack together with, a digital link to our Vespertinas. We had the cover done already. And I think by a link to like our past stuff. And so we sent it to him. And about a week later, he was like, hey, let's put this out. And we're like, okay, that's great. And he's like, yeah, we'll put up some kind of limited thing and then that'll be it. And awesome. And we're like, okay, great. And then a week later, he emails us back. He's like, you know what? We'll do this EP and we also want to put out your next full length. And we're like, well, fantastic. That's even better. So yeah, it was a pretty great experience. I think we had to send them a demo of Nous in its primitive state, just to make sure that there was, music that was worth putting out. So, once that was kind of established, it was smooth sailing and, then you just had to sign on the dotted line, as they say.
So Nous is out now through Season of Mist Records. Michael, tell people how they can order this album.
You can order it through Season of Mist. There's both a North American and a European store. So whichever side of the world you're on, you can choose whichever one's best for you. You can also get it through our Bandcamp page, which is just, Bandcamp Culted. So very easy to find. That's probably the easiest places to find it.
Do you want to tell me a little bit about physical versions that are coming out?
Yeah, so if you go back to Vespertina Synaxis, there's both single LP and Digi CD. And for Nous, there's a double LP gatefold, which is gorgeous. It's worth the fortune that it will cost to ship to you. And then a jewel case CD. And of course, digital formats are available.
And if people want to follow Culted online, how can they do that?
You can do that in any three ways. Facebook, of course, it's Facebook Culted Doom. Instagram is, I think it's Culted Official on there. And Twitter, we're even there. My least favorite social media source, but I do make sure I post on there as well. So those are the three main sources you can keep up to date with what we're thinking and doing.
So you've been extremely generous with your time this evening, but is there anything else you want to say?
No, man. Thanks for the conversation. It was a good one. And hopefully, if people are still listening, if they're still listening and they've enjoyed the songs that you've played this evening, hey, check out the entire album. I think it's well worth your time.
Cool. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you.